Hi, I'm Paris, and ever since I finished my chemo treatment 2 years ago, I've been meaning to make a video talking about the cost of chemo. Well, finally, got all my papers out, looked through them all, figured this all out, and now I'm ready to tell you what chemo costs. Now, my particular chemo treatment was with docetaxel, also called taxotere, and it was for prostate cancer. Keep in mind, this is from 2 years back, so there's probably been inflation to bump these numbers up. And I can tell you, cancer is not an inexpensive disease. So just the cost for the docetaxel infusion, and I had 6 of them over the course of 4.5 months, each 1 milligram dose. 1 milligram. They would mix it in the IV bag as they put it in, but it's 1 milligram, $9,700. So I had 6 of those infusions, so we're looking at close to $60,000 right there. And then of course they charge you for doing the infusion. They have to have people standing by in case you have a bad reaction. They have the nice chairs and the blankets set up for you. That was about $700 for each infusion. And then they don't put just, in my case, they don't put just the docetaxel in. They mix in some other stuff to help prevent the nausea. I think there's steroids and a few $100s worth of other things. So I'd say we're up to about $1,000 in addition to the docetaxel, times 6. And then, of course, they have to monitor you very closely while you're on this treatment because it does unpleasant things to you. And so there are blood tests. You have to visit regularly with your oncologist. For me, it was, every single time I went for an infusion, I had a visit. And then I also had to come back a week later so they could check my red blood cell, white blood cell count. So I'm thinking for each, let's break it down into 6 doses and all the associated charges, I would say that we're probably looking at about another $1,000 worth of charges for those other tests and visits, each of the 6 infusions. So at an absolute minimum, $12,000 related to the cost of each infusion, 6 infusions, looking at about $72,000 right there. And there are loads of side effects with having chemo. So depending on which side effects you have and then how aggressively they have to treat those side effects and how expensive it is to treat them, this could be all over the place. I know that if your red blood cell count gets too low, mine got down to moderate anemia, but not down to severe anemia. If you get down to severe, they may have to admit you to the hospital and give you a transfusion to get your red blood cell numbers back up. Super expensive if that happens. In my case, it was my white blood cell count. And what they do if your white blood cell count gets knocked way down, and mine was way down, and to worry about you getting an infection, they took this little guy and they would when after the docetaxel infusion and all the rest of it, they would take this and activate it. It's a little thing that they would put on the back of my arm, and chunk chunk, it would adhere. And when they turned it on, it would actually take a little plastic tube and inject it into the arm, and then a timer would start on this. So basically, they got to give it time for all your white blood cells to get knocked down. Then this kicks in, injects into your capillaries, gets into your bloodstream, gets into your bone marrow, and makes your bone marrow go into overdrive to produce more white blood cells so you don't have an infection occur while you're having the chemo treatment. And this little thing activated after the appropriate amount of time and made some clicking and whirring noises and injected the medication into me. And then after a few days, I could take this off. So what was the cost for all this high-tech wizardry? $9,800. So this, to counteract the side effects of the chemo, actually just in itself cost more than the 1 milligram of the medication of the chemo. So I had 5 of these Neulasta injections at about $10,000 a piece. And so we're looking at about $50,000 there. So I would say with the docetaxel medication, the infusing fee, the test to make sure it was okay to do the infusing, the other things they put in there so you don't get nauseous and terribly sick while it's doing those things to your body, doctor's visits, follow-ups, all of that, we're looking at $72,000, and then just the side effect treatment for the low white blood cell count, we're looking at an additional $50,000. So we're coming in at a minimum manufacturer suggested retail price of about $122,000. So that price, I believe, is full retail. Now, if you're going to go in, you don't have insurance, and you're going to have to pay cash for this, I'm pretty sure they cut some kind of a deal and bring those prices down, because for the insurance company, and the insurance company can drive a hard bargain, they really cut the prices down. I would say on average they get a 60 to 70% reduction in price, and then that's the insurance rate. Now the insurance wants some help paying for that, of course, so then they turn to me and say, hey, you've got to pay your deductible first, and then you got to get up to your out-of-pocket for the year, which I had no problem doing because I had already had all the stuff involved with figuring out that you have cancer. All the doctor's visits, blood test, MRI, biopsy, all that stuff originally was thousands of dollars, so I was already probably pretty close to my out-of-pocket limit, and then just one time going here and getting the docetaxel, boom, hit me up to, it was around $5,000, the out-of-pocket limit for one person on our family insurance plan. But even a $5,000 charge, if you're not expecting it, anticipating it, you haven't saved up for it, that can break people. Fortunately, for that first year's bill, with all the surprises, we have Voya, which it's kind of like Aflac, if you've heard of that. It covers extra expenses when you have a medical emergency. And cancer is one of the things on their list that once you have that diagnosis, they basically write you a check for $5,000 knowing you're going to be spending way more than that. And that sure came in handy. It was just about the amount of the out-of-pocket maximum. So having that check to be able to pay those expenses that first year helped so much. Now, they give you that $5,000 check one time. If you still need additional cancer treatment, which you probably will, year two, you're going to be on your own, but at least you have sort of a running start at it, because after dealing with everything the first year, you know what kind of expenses you're going to be looking at. And so that surprise in the second year isn't as surprising, but it's still just as financially unpleasant. Now, in my case, the chemo did a great job of beating back the cancer, so well worth the money. But they wanted me to follow up with radiation treatment, which I did, proton therapy radiation for 9 weeks up in Dallas. So the cost of that was actually more than the chemo. And then I am on a hormone suppressing treatment called Lupron. The shots for that are pricey too. Every 3 months I get an $11,000 shot. So that's $44,000 a year. It's a 3-year course of treatment. So even that exceeds the cost of the chemo. The chemo was the cheapest of all the cancer treatments I've had. So I would say the full retail price for the chemo, the proton therapy, radiation, and the hormone suppressing therapy over the full course of its 3 years, the total cost of that retail, probably $400,000 to $500,000. The discount rate for my entire course of cancer treatments, this is discount as in what the insurance company has to pay. Maybe if you go in and can pay cash, maybe this is what you would pay. Probably about $150,000 or so. To help make sure I won't need any additional cancer treatments, I've changed up my diet and lifestyle, and I eat foods that might be a little more expensive now than getting processed foods, fast foods, snack foods. Stay away from those. I go to the produce department of the supermarket, and maybe I spend a little more because I'm buying fresh fruits and vegetables, doing that preparation of food here at home. But even if that costs a little bit more than getting Twinkies and a Whopper for lunch, the cost when you get sick from those diet and lifestyle choices, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, they make spending a little more for some fresh fruit and vegetables seem like nothing. The last numbers I saw were that about 1/3 of all cancers are probably preventable just by changing your diet and lifestyle. So I encourage you to make the effort to eat healthy and live healthy now. Otherwise, you'll be paying for it with chemo and radiation and having no testosterone for 3 years. You do the math, and I'll see you on the next review.
There are so many choices and you don't want to stress. You want your health food at home, receiving only the best. That's what we're here for. We give honest reviews. parristx.